long-serving public servant here at the City of Portland, somebody who's made a huge impression on our community, Antoinette Edwards. And I'll turn this over to Aja in a minute, but I just have to say this. There has never been anybody that I've seen with this kind of support in the community who is so almost reticent to accept public acknowledgement for the work she does. So she's here somewhat against her will. But we who are her partners and her teammates, we just couldn't let it go without a formal acknowledgement here at City Council. And so Antoinette, thank you for giving us this opportunity to acknowledge the fantastic work that you have done over your years here at City Hall. And with that, I'll turn this over to Aja. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Aja Belair, Executive Assistant to Mayor Ted Wheeler, and it is my great honor to be here today to speak about a woman who I've had the honor to get to know and work with over the last year. Although when you first see Antoinette, one usually thinks queen. There's so much more than meets the eye. Fierce community leader, change agent, humble public servant, loving mother, wife, teacher, advocate, colleague, and friend are just a few of the words I use for this powerhouse of a person. Antoinette is definitely a force to be reckoned with, and today we honor her years of public service and bid her farewell into her next journey of retirement. First, I want to take a look inside the Office of Youth Violence and Prevention, which Antoinette leads, along with Policy Manager Tom Peavy, and play this short video for everybody to see.
Thank you.
My name is Antoinette Edwards, and I am the Director of the Office of Youth Violence Prevention for the City of Portland with Mayor Wheeler.
I'm Tom Peavy. I'm the Policy Manager for the Office of Youth Violence Prevention for the City of Portland. I worked 13 years as a patrol officer on and off in my career out in this area. So I have an extreme love for this area.
My goal for the Office of Youth Violence Prevention is that we, in a collaborative way, address the issues of violence and trauma in this community. I work with community members, working with my street-level outreach workers. I think that's the strength of this office. It's a hub for community.
A lot of people associate our office with gang-impacted communities. We're more than that. We service communities that have the need for trauma-informed care.
From a trauma perspective, I'm not asking what's wrong with you. I'm asking what happened and how can I support you. This work is so important because people are hurting, and so often media, society, community, we normalize the pain. And we look at it from what's wrong, why are they doing that? As opposed to look at the root causes and address that in a way, in a respectful way. And how do we support people in their healing?
I'm in the work because I feel as if I have the capacity to help people. And there are people in need that are silent when they don't know where the resources are. They don't know how to acquire resources. They don't know who to contact to gain resources. And so our office supplies that necessary hub for them.
This is the Office of Youth Violence Prevention, and I'd like for us to focus more on that. How do we provide that safe space for a child to grow, for a mother and a father, and for a family and a community to grow and learn and share and be empowered in an authentic way? That's what I'd like to see.
So I'd like to turn it over to the City Council to thank Antoinette for her service, and the mayor to read the proclamation in honor of Antoinette.
Very good. Before I do that, colleagues, did anybody want to say anything? Commissioner Fritz?
You have just been so inspiring to me over the 10 and a half years that I've been here. Every time I've come across you in the community or in City Hall, you've made me feel better about however my day was going. Crossing paths with you gave me something to smile about, something uplifting. Your fashion sense is absolutely inspiring. And your contributions to our whole community and recognizing the communities within the communities. You've just taught me so much, and I appreciate your heart-driven work and the fact that you've worked with how many mayors now?
All of them, no, 4.
Yeah, 4, right? And that each one of them has recognized your special gifts and your special abilities and your anchoring of this office, starting with Tom Potter and then through Mayor Hales and Mayor Adams and now Mayor Wheeler. It's a hugely difficult job that I'm amazed that anybody does for more than 6 weeks, never mind as long as you have done it. And it's the richer because you've been doing it you've provided the continuity between different mayors, between different approaches. There's Antoinette Edwards just doing your thing because you seek the good. And I'm happy for you that you've chosen to retire. I wish you all the best in that. And I just want to thank you sincerely for what you've meant to me personally.
Antoinette, if I could I want to actually get to the proclamation because that's the high point, but you and I both served under 4 mayors. Who was your favorite?
All of them.
And I just want to make a comment about 10 years of service. I have noticed recently that a lot of people who take appointed jobs in this building have chosen to serve what I would call abbreviated terms and then move on. Now, I know this work is very hard. I know we live in times where there's extra challenges that we deal with in these jobs. I know people have lots of different considerations. It says a lot about you that you've stuck with it for this long a period of time. These are not the best paying jobs. They're jobs where often people have complained, particularly in this building, about feeling unsafe from time to time. There's enormous challenges, but you stuck with it. So thank you for being a role model for a public servant.
Antoinette, I regret that we haven't really had a chance to form a personal relationship or work together at the city, but your name is very known to me. Antoinette Edwards is a name I feel like almost everyone knows, whether they're connected to City Hall or not. And certainly your style also makes you stand out. So many times in the building, I've caught a dress or an earring and done a double take. Who is that? Oh, it's Antoinette, of course. So I just want to thank you and congratulate you and encourage you to enjoy and rest and recuperate, but I have a feeling that your work is not done. Yeah, thank you.
And I just want to say, Antoinette, I wish you well. I don't know what's next for you. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun. There are very few people that I call hero. You're a hero. You're somebody who has had some of the most uncomfortable and difficult conversations when people say, who is going to have this conversation? Who's going to help heal a rift in the community? Who's going to bring us back together again? Often you served in that role. And you've been a fierce advocate. You've been the glue that in many respects holds our community together, particularly at a difficult time when it's so easy for us to be divided. In the absence of that kind of hard work, you've been a voice for people who don't always have a voice here at City Hall or feel frankly like they have a voice anywhere in society. You've given them that voice. And you've been here for all of us, and you've helped us all out, and this is really the least we could do. So as a council, As you know, we read proclamations. We can't necessarily give you tax abatements, so we do the next best thing. And this is on behalf of all of us here at City Hall, and we'll give this to you, but you'll probably need some help carrying it out. And as you know, our proclamations represent the values of this entire chamber. And so I now have the honor of reading a proclamation that we wrote specially for you today. Whereas Antoinette Edwards has been the director of the Office of Youth Violence Prevention since 2011 and has worked tirelessly to convene conversations and build community support to prevent violence in our city. Whereas she received the Gladys McCoy Citizen Involvement Award from Citizen Involvement Committee of Multnomah County in 2009. Whereas she created, through directing, a community poll, the Community Police Peace Collaborative Public Forum in September of 2014, and facilitated bi-weekly meetings ever since. Whereas she received the Social Justice Fund Northwest Jeanette Rankin Award for being a tireless lifelong activist in 2013. Whereas she received the Equity Foundation's Women Who Lead Award in 2015. Whereas Antoinette has been a beacon of light, a guardian angel, a sister, a wife, a mother, a community leader, and a friend, and continues to inspire hope in all who meet her. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim July 31st, 2019 to be Antoinette Edwards' Fierce Advocate Day in Portland, and encourage all residents to participate in this day. Thank you, Antoinette, for all of your service. Now, Antoinette, you humored us this far by agreeing to show up to let us honor you. Would you further humor us by giving us a few remarks? We'd love to know what some of your favorite moments have been, and what advice would you give us?
Thank you all for this amazing day. I am in gratitude for the love, the love. I feel the love. My words would be, we need you. You are awesome leaders. You were chosen on purpose for a reason. We need your unified, collective wisdom and your strength. Portland, we don't have to make it great again. Just keep it good and make it better, and we can't do it without you. So those would be my words for you all. I have tremendous respect for each and every one of you. And the courageous conversations I've had with folks, I've had them with Ted. I've had some tender Ted moments, and I appreciate you for that. My parting words for community, beloved community, we are so much stronger together. We are resilient, we are wonderful, we are powerful, and let's just be the best of who we are. And I thank you all.
Thank you, Antoinette. Appreciate it. Can we get a photo?
Like the red carpet's all this round. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Antoinette. And Antoinette, I'll just give this to auction. So we're going to do 724 first from this morning's agenda. Yeah. Wait just a second. Carla, we'll wait just a minute. I'm going to do 724 from this morning first.
I'm gonna go back and write down what she said.
That was lovely.
Really lovely.
She is such an eloquent
Yeah.
speaker. I mean,
Just off the cuff, too. You put her on the spot, Mayor.
Because I knew she would do that.
Yeah.
I was.
Did we carry over?
724. I think we're ready, Carla. Go ahead. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Wednesday, July 31st afternoon session of the Portland City Council. Carla, good afternoon. Please call the roll.
Good afternoon. Hardesty, Udaley,
Here.
Fritz,
Here.
Fish,
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. And now we'll hear from legal counsel on the rules of order and decorum. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. If it does not, you may be ruled out of order. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Please remain seated in council chambers unless entering or exiting. If you are filming the proceedings, please do not use bright lights or disrupt the meeting. Disruptive conduct such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Very good. Thank you. We had one item, colleagues, that was pulled over from this morning, item 724. Carla, could you please read that item?
Authorize a 61-month lease from Jason and Mayunja M. Lee to the Office of Management and Finance for space at 220 Southwest Main Street, located on the ground floor of the Justice Center for programs with ancillary services to the building at an average annual cost of approximately $54,500.
Colleagues, the Office of Management and Finance and the Police Bureau are here to present information to Council for authorization to execute a lease for available ground floor retail space at the Justice Center from the private party owner. The city and Multnomah County are the majority owners of the Justice Center and jointly desire to have the full occupancy of the building. The Police Bureau has two programs where ground floor access is absolutely essential and that provide supporting services to the building. Currently, the Justice Center doesn't have a community space, so all community members must check in through the front desk for any business that they may have. Leasing this space will provide a huge benefit to the community by having more accessible space, and in my opinion, this is long overdue. OMF and the Police Bureau determined that the space meets the needs of the programs and the owner is willing to lease at a commercially reasonable rental rate and terms. And we have folks here to present. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor. My name is Pauline Goebel. I am Property Manager in the Office of Management and Finance, and I am here today with staff from the Portland Police Bureau to request authorization from Council to execute a 61-month lease for space at 220 Southwest Main Street, located on the ground floor of the Justice Center. As you know, the Justice Center is a 16-story public condominium that contains court facilities, correction facilities, and police services, including the Central Precinct, as well as ground floor retail space. The city and the county have majority ownership of the building, and the private party owner, the Lees, own the remaining 10% of the building in the form of 2 ground floor units. This year, one of those units became available to lease, and the city and the county have long desired to secure the 2,400 square foot space for uses that are consistent with the building's services. So the police have 2 programs, as you had mentioned, where ground floor access is essential, and so they're going to provide an update to council on those programs and their space needs.
Mike Somerson, I'm the facility manager for Portland Police. I don't know, did you need any other information about the space we're planning to move?
Is your mic on?
I don't know.
Pull it-
Do I
just
need
pull
to
it
get closer? Mike Somerson, I'm the facility manager with Portland Police.
Thanks, Mike.
We have this 2,400 ground floor space that we're looking to rent. Long-term will be a community room for us, and in the short term, we'll move our quartermaster to that space while the city does our elevator remodel project. Currently, there's only 1 elevator that goes up to our quartermaster office, so we'll need a place to put it. And then when it gets moved out of there, we'll use that space as a community room.
What is a quartermaster office?
They are the ones that house all of our police supplies, everything you see on the uniforms and things like that, including our radios and it basically looks like a retail store with racks of uniforms and then all the supplies that they use to put on their uniforms. So it's basically a storage space with one person managing the entire program.
And currently, they have to go all the way up to the 16th floor. and back.
It's on our 16th floor where our mechanical room is. It's also a windowless environment, so it's not the best environment for someone to work out of. So this will be a ground floor space with windows to work out of, and then long-term, that will be turned into a community room. And we'd like to move our quartermaster out to our training division where it kind of belongs.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the short and long-term plan for this space.
Thank you.
Yep.
Very good. Any further questions? Carla, are there people signed up for public testimony on this item?
They may have been signed up for the morning session. It was Charles, Bridge Crane Johnson, Jeff Dubois, and Maggie.
Okay.
Very good. There being no further questions, please call the roll.
Udaly,
Hi.
Fritz,
Is that really good that it's become available? Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And thanks for your patience in coming back this afternoon. Next item, please, which is the first on the regular afternoon agenda. That's 726.
Authorize an intergovernmental agreement between the Portland Housing Bureau and Portland State University to develop a landlord-tenant mediation services pilot program.
Colleagues, the $150,000 for a mediation services pilot program was included in the 2019-2020 fiscal year budget in response to a request for services from the Rental Services Commission. To ensure that the program design for the pilot is targeted and effective, the Bureau will be working with the program design experts at Portland State University and service providers in the community. As the Housing Commissioner, I will commit the Housing Bureau to keeping the City Council informed on the implementation and outcomes of the pilot program as we consider future permanent programs for the Rental Services Office. And we have Matt Scheibold here from the Housing Bureau to, I don't know if you want to present or just take questions today. It's up to you.
I think Matt Scheibold, for the record, the only thing I would add is the focus of Portland State University will be to compile data sets and do quantitative analysis on major issues that could be addressed through mediation services, and then to engage through qualitative analysis with renters and landlords, our Rental Services Commission, and industry and stakeholder associations to also seed some of the issues that could be resolved through mediation, and then help us with the program design of the pilot. They will not be administering the pilot. We will do a separate RFP process for a community-based organization to administer the mediation services themselves.
Very good questions. Public uh-oh, we lost Carla. She'll be back. She never leaves for long. Do you see how we miss you when you're gone? Like literally, City Hall comes to a grinding halt. Carla, has anybody signed up for public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Very good. Any further questions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler.
I'd like to thank the entire Portland Housing Bureau staff, specifically both Director Shannon Callahan and Matt Schaubold. And I'd like to thank Cupid Alexander and Tia Williams on my staff for working this through. Thank you. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 727.
Establish an annual residential rental unit registration fee to fund the Housing Bureau's Rental Services Office from the Housing Investment Fund.
Colleagues, I'm pleased to bring forward the rental registration fee, which has long been a commitment and a priority of mine to help support the Office of Renter Services and establish a system to collect more accurate data of the rental market in Portland. In 2017, we set a rental registration requirement for all units in the city of Portland. In the first year of registration, we did not charge a fee. That was deliberate. We wanted to encourage voluntary compliance for landlords, but it's been clear from the beginning that a fee would need to be established. We asked the Revenue Division in the Portland Housing Bureau to return to us this year with the established fee. Since 2017, we've made consistent progress in increasing the city's role in landlord-tenant law and services, including establishing the Rental Services Office, the Rental Services Commission, adopting local landlord-tenant law, increasing landlord-tenant services, and increasing training and education services. Roughly half the work being completed is funded with one-time funds, and we need to find a sustainable and responsible way to pay for the Rental Services Office. Portland is one of the only cities our size to not have a rental registration system in place and fees to cover the basic services. We're behind the curve, and this is an imperative first step to allowing us to have a more robust and streamlined support for renters in our community. This council has also made it clear the importance for data-driven policy making. This fee will support the maintenance of an expanded registration system, something that I'll be back in the fall bump to ask for support of this council for funding for the procurement of the expanded system so that we have data not just on the number of units and their location, but accessibility, general unit characteristics, and other relevant market data. The recommended fee is in response to the budget note we included in our adopted budget this fiscal year, and it's reasonable when compared to other cities in the region and across the country. I'm now going to turn this over to Director Callahan and Director Lanham and their team, who can give us more background on the process that got us here today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you and good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Shannon Callahan of the Portland Housing Bureau. Matthew Schaubold and I will first provide you some context for the item before you today, including an overview of the services being provided by the Rental Services Office and details regarding the implementation of the rental registration system. And then Thomas Lanham and I will talk about some of the factors that we considered in crafting the recommendation before you today. In 2017, the Rental Services Office was established within the Portland Housing Bureau. The Rental Services Commission was also established. It is a 12-member commission which serves as the primary public forum for discussion of rental housing law and regulation, renter-owner programs, and services within the city of Portland. In 2017, Council also authorized new funding to increase direct services to provide additional legal assistance, as well as expanded education and training services. In addition, 2017 was a busy year, and Council passed the temporary relocation assistance policy and tasked the Housing Bureau with leading a technical committee to address and make recommendations regarding a permanent relocation assistance policy. Last year, Council approved the rental registration requirement, requiring that all units, rental unit owners in the city of Portland register their units through the business license tax platform. As the mayor mentioned, to encourage voluntary compliance, Council did not set a fee for the system within the first year and backfilled the expenses of the system with one-time resources. Without a rental registration system, it is impossible for us to determine who may be providing rental units within the city of Portland. To ensure that we were reaching out to as many property owners as we could, we sent a mailer in collaboration with the Revenue Division to all property owners in the city of Portland regarding the rental registration requirements. Also in 2018, Council passed a permanent relocation assistance policy and tasked the Housing Bureau with administering the policy as well as processing exemptions. Since the passage of that policy, the Housing Bureau has provided landlords technical assistance and processed exemptions without charging a fee for the service. The Housing Bureau has also instituted new culturally specific fair housing enforcement programs and piloted an expungement program in 2018. This brings us to our current item this afternoon, which is talking about what we're doing in 2019. As you know, Council recently adopted a security deposit requirement as well as application and screening criteria requirements, and tasked the Housing Bureau and the Revenue Division to bring you a rental unit registration fee. We are also implementing a mediation services pilot, which you just heard in the prior item, and we are increasing our education and training services for both landlords and tenants. The goal of our service to landlords in our increased tenant and training services will be so that they both understand and comply with local, federal, and state landlord-tenant laws. And it is our hope that we will, by doing so and providing those services, reduce conflicts between landlords and tenants and reduce liability for landlords that they may have if they don't understand the changes that have recently occurred both at the state and local level. Going forward in 2020, we believe that if the fall bump request that the mayor just mentioned in his opening remarks is approved, we would procure an enhanced rental registration system and work with our Rental Services Commission on recommendations for the type of data to be collected. We would anticipate bringing that system online in 2021 in alignment with the timing for the new business license tax platform. As well, we anticipate continuing to increase our education and training for both landlords and tenants. And now to give you an overview generally of our plans in more details for the rental registration system, I'll turn it over to Matthew Schbold.
So for the record, again, Matthew Schbold with the Housing Bureau, and as the mayor and Shannon have both mentioned, council last year passed the registration requirement, and we'd like to thank our partners of the Revenue Division for working with us to make that happen. We were able to use the business income tax filings as the mechanism in order to register units, but that has significant limitations on the data we can collect. It's really, it's the address of the unit, the location of the unit, and we can, through the filings, try and understand the number of units per landlord. But there have been conversations that we've had over the past couple of years as City Council has considered various local landlord-tenant policies and services where there have been questions that the Housing Bureau hasn't been able to answer, and a general desire for additional data. And so we have contacted some vendors and to try and get some initial preliminary bids on an off-the-shelf configurable system that has the ability to collect, as the mayor mentioned, data on accessibility, other unit characteristics, other market data. And so should the Housing Bureau be appropriated funding for that, we will go through a process with the Rental Services Commission, with council members, with the public, to have a discussion about what data we should be collecting in order to better inform our public policy decisions.
As to the recommendation for a fee, the Housing Bureau worked with the Rental Services Commission, which in April of this year recommended that if a fee were to be adopted, that the fee should be administratively simple and easy to communicate, and that a uniform flat fee would best accomplish this goal. We considered council's direction and are recommending a fee that will fully cover the unfunded rental services office costs, provide resources for maintenance costs for an expanded rental registration system, and ensure that the fee revenue will be used exclusively for rental services offices costs and the cost of the revenue division in administering the system. Therefore, we are recommending an annual rental registration unit fee of $60 per year with an exemption for regulated affordable housing and adjustments with the Consumer Price Index West. With the average market rent in Portland equating to $1,425 per month, the fee equates to approximately 1/3 of 1% of the annual average rent in Portland. And now I'd like to turn it over to Thomas Lanham to add some comments from the Revenue Division.
Thank you. Thomas Lanham from the Revenue Division. I'll keep it brief. I think it's mostly been covered. Generally, a fee needs to provide some benefit back to those who pay it. And this one does through the services provided by the Rental Services Office. One of the top considerations that we have in revenue for any tax or fee is administrability. And we look for a structure that is very easy to verify, explain, and understand. This fee meets all three of those tests in terms of being very straightforward. As far as the rate itself, we set it at $60 because this is the rate we feel is most likely to cover the costs of the program as we understand them today. We are estimating the revenue yield at this point with no prior track record to look at, so we may need to make an adjustment in a prior year, and we've been given prior authority by this body to make that change administratively if it's necessary. So I will stop there and happy to answer any questions.
I have few questions, Mayor.
Commissioner Fish.
I just have some basic questions. It's an excellent presentation. Director Callahan, the $60 that we're proposing to charge, how does that relate to the charges at sister cities that you canvassed?
If I might, Commissioner, thank you for the question. Carla, would you turn up back on the PowerPoint for a moment? Commissioner, I'd actually like to turn it over to Matthew Schabel to answer a little bit more of your questions as he's done the research on all the sister jurisdictions. But we are putting up a slide for you so that you can see some comparators of other jurisdictions.
And I'd like a very high-level answer if I could.
Great.
You don't need to
Sure.
get...
So the back page of the memo also includes additional cities, but we included these 5 not only to illustrate the fees in different cities, but different structures. And I'll hit them at a very high level. Gresham charges a first unit fee and then a variable additional unit fee. Minneapolis charges a building fee and a unit fee. Seattle charges a first unit fee and then a flat additional unit fee. Philadelphia has a flat per unit fee, similar to the fee we're proposing. And then Dallas has a variable fee structure for single family versus multifamily. So as far as rates, fairly comparable. There are various structures, but we have heard from the jurisdictions that we've contacted as well as stakeholders that a flat fee is the easiest to administer and to understand.
Thank you. Director Callahan, it's 2 years from now, and we're getting a presentation from the auditor on her first audit of this program. How do we ensure that the proceeds of this fee are dedicated to a particular account and not interspersed with other funds?
Well, Commissioner, we have ensured that they would be going into a special fund within the Housing Bureau's Housing Investment Fund for the Rental Services Office only. And we would look to our budget office as well as counsel through the budget process to ensure that those fundings remain in that.
So it goes into a
line
dedicated
item.
fund and then is distributed?
It would go into a dedicated fund. The only cost that would be taken out would be the cost that the Revenue Division has already indicated would be their cost of administering the system.
To Thomas Lanham, what do we anticipate will be the compliance rate? When you look at this and you forecast over the next 5 years, obviously we have some experience with the arts tax, although that may not be comparable. We have some experience with other taxes and fees in terms of compliance. What are you predicting with respect to this fee?
Initial compliance, we think, will be about 60%, climbing to 90% as the program matures. So our overall business license tax compliance rate is just north of 90% at the peak of each year. This program ultimately should mirror that, particularly for 2 reasons. One, we have recently executed a contract to replace all of our databases and revenue and we'll soon be able to leverage federal taxpayer information in a way that will help us reveal rent incomes, basically Schedule Cs from 1040 filings that we can't currently access. So we will, in a very real way, be able to pinpoint who we should be hearing from around this. And then, of course, the second benefit is in approximately FY '21, '22. Along in there, we will be implementing e-filing, which will also make it very easy for people to comply with this. If they're using TurboTax or H&R Block, this will just be another page in a wizard that will be presented to the taxpayer to comply.
And finally, thank you. For similar kinds of fees, what tools do you have available to you to ensure compliance?
The primary tool that we're going to be using is the federal taxpayer information.
No, but that's how you cross-reference. I'm talking about what's the, you have a carrot and a stick. What's the stick?
So any taxpayer that fails to comply with all the tenets of our tax code is subject to up to a $500 civil penalty per year per jurisdiction, but in this case, it would just be Portland, it wouldn't be the county. So there is the ability to implement a penalty, and that would be something that we would be looking at. Given the amount, it would depend on taxpayer circumstances. If the taxpayer owed not only the rental registration fee, but say had other outstanding tax debt, then the full $500 would certainly be implicated in that circumstance. It's likely that we would promulgate an internal policy or procedure to perhaps bring in a lower penalty. The penalty is up to $500 is our authority, so we could make it a little more reasonable given that this is a $60 fee.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful if it's, I mean, I think a penalty that's almost 10 times the fee is going to be suspect. So I would look forward to hearing from you on that. And I'm assuming, Director Callahan, that we'll be doing aggressive outreach and education in years 1 and 2 in aid of making sure people know that whatever we land on here, that they have to do it. And we may even have a golden period where if they have a good faith reason for not complying, they don't get dinged.
I think so, Commissioner, and I also think that we are currently, the Revenue Division is currently receiving filings in the present time from tax filers, and so 2019 is the first year of the registration with voluntary compliance, no fee. So I know as we're gathering more information and they're registering and ahead of time, it'll be easier for us to communicate with them about the fee.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you for your work on this. Could you explain a bit more about the exemption for affordable housing under the guidelines of the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to households earning no more than 60%? How does somebody qualify for that?
So, Commissioner, we would be proposing that this is regulated affordable housing, so agreements that landlords have in place with the city or other jurisdictions that have assured that they are keeping rents at 60% or below. So it would not be a market solution necessarily, but where there are regulated units that are requiring you to keep your rents affordable at 60% AMI or below.
Did you consider having an exemption for any affordable housing and saying what that is?
So you mean looking at the market to try to determine what the rents weights were and if their rents were a lesser amount than what the...
Yeah.
We considered a variety of different options, but we currently have no way to collect data presently on rents or any way to verify what the private market is actually charging. I know Thomas and I have actually recently had a discussion about the possibility of doing that in future years based on changes that'll be implemented through the upgraded business license tax platform. But at the present moment, there is not a way for us to do that in a verifiable way.
What about exempting mobile home parks? Because from what I've been reading, rents there tend to be much less because they're just renting the ground. So you mentioned it's 1/3 of 1% for the average home, but it's more like 1% if you're only paying $500 in rent.
I would have to defer, I'd take a moment to make sure that the definition of dwelling unit would actually include space rental, and I'd want to double check, and actually I'd look to Matt Schabold on that, but I would say that many mobile home situations are not just space rental, but you're actually renting, many folks living in those parks are not necessarily owners of their coach, but actually actually renting both the unit and the space. Matthew, would you proffer a?
Yeah, they are, under the current requirements, they're rental dwelling units under ORS 90, state landlord tenant law, and would be subject to the registration requirement. And the census estimates around 900 manufactured home rentals in the city of Portland.
So that probably should be something that should be considered, is exempting them, because we know that they are some of the most naturally affordable rental housing in Portland. And that just seems like an expensive $2,000 a month condo in the Pearl, paying the same $5 as somebody who's living in a manufactured home park just doesn't seem reasonable. Did you look at other kinds of fees? Somebody suggested, why don't we have a fee on the new construction of apartments and condominiums that are valued at over a certain amount of money? Was that considered?
For the rental registration fee itself? Mm-hmm. We do have a separate excise tax that is actually levied on the new construction of apartments and dwellings in the city of Portland, and all of those funds flow for the development of new affordable housing. So we actually do have a construction excise tax in existence in the city of Portland, which captures that new development. So we did not consider a different structure for the rental registration fee that would charge only new units being created versus older existing units. Frankly, I think our rationale and the rationale would be that the services that we're providing and the data that we're trying to seek collecting out of the rental registration system are necessary in both circumstances, whether they're existing units or whether they're newer units. So we're getting phone calls from landlords. We're doing a service for landlords, whether they're landlords of a new building or whether they're landlords of an existing stock.
Okay. And are landlords allowed to add this new fee onto their existing leases, or do they have to wait until the lease renews to pass it along to tenants?
Commissioner, any rent increase that they were increasing by would be subject to state and local laws. I could not speak about individual situations that a landlord may be in a particular lease, or whether they've already made an increase in excess either of state or local law. I could not answer that blanketly.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer either. I'm wondering at what point this who pays it this year? And I'm wondering about implementing it right now rather than giving some notice so that landlords can build it into their budgets. Is this intended to go into effect right away?
It's intended to go into effect for the next, for this tax year and next year's tax filing, so in 2020.
So it would be due in April of 2020.
Starting on the implementation date of this, so 6 months worth.
Effectively,
5 months worth.
the effective implementation date of today's action is January 1st, 2019. However, payment is not due until April 15th of 2020. Many filers will extend. So some leases will be caught wholly, there would be no opportunity for revisiting the contract versus others would expire between now and April.
I thought we were not allowed to do retroactive taxes.
Yes, we can.
Oh.
We can. And given the materiality of the $60, that didn't raise a flag for us in revenue.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Good presentation. Thank you. Carla, how many people do we have signed up?
13.
Okay, why don't we do 2 minutes, and if everybody could try and stay within the 2 minutes, we'd appreciate it. If you could call up the first three, please.
First three, please, coming up are Mark Rogers, Kathy Rogers, and Michael Havlick, I believe it is.
Yeah, and by the way, we're not taking a vote on this today, so if people want to provide written testimony, we'll certainly accept that as well. Good afternoon. Walter, thanks for being here.
My name is Mark Rogers, and I'm an apartment building owner with my wife Kathy. We own a building on 19th and Hawthorne, and we provide an affordable housing alternative in that area. On the 26th, Oregon Live came out with an article that basically outlined this proposal. And so I was sitting with my 21-year-old son over the weekend, and we decided to look at all the comments in the section. And so we went through those, and we...
You were looking at the comments on Oregon Live?
Yes, the comments on Oregon Live.
Before you go any further, that's a cry for help. And I want to say that we discourage you from doing so just for your own mental health.
Okay, well, do you mind if I finish what I have to say?
Well, in the spirit in which I offered it, which was humorous, I appreciate the spirit in which you made your comment.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Fair enough. The majority of the comments were opposed to the fee structure. And so I guess my comment is that if you're not paying attention to what people are saying, then are you really listening to your constituents? I also I'm a commercial realtor, I also talked to a client of mine, and he shared an email exchange between himself and one of you. And I'm going to read that, and it's going to be anonymous because I don't feel like I need to point anybody out specifically. But he said, so to answer your question, I would likely email all of my tenants and let them know that due to policies of City Council, their rents would be going up by $25 a month. Most of my current tenants have not seen a rent increase from me in 2 or 3 years, and I think you would consider the bulk of them affordable. Councilperson responded, thank you for your message. I share your concerns. Will you pass this fee along to your renters? I think I would if I rented a home. So I think it's easy. It's a very polarizing subject, and I think it's easy to look at landlords and demonize them as uncaring and interested only in the bottom line. So I'd like to share a story, and it might take more than 27 seconds. But for the last 11 years, I've had somebody living on my building on 19th and Hawthorne for free. We pay his utilities, and we provide him with a cell phone. Probably $1,000 a month, maybe $12,000 a year. We don't have a formal agreement. We don't even have a handshake. But what we have done is he looks out for my interests, and I look out for his. And I think that's the right thing to do. I think it's a Portland thing to do. And I think that's what we've shown that we're willing to do and have done for the last 11 years. So that's really my closing. And I would hope that you would reconsider this and maybe take more input.
So, Mayor, can I just make one quick comment?
Commissioner Fish.
My inept attempt at humor, which you very nicely parried, I was pointing out the fact that not only is the internet not the first or second or 10th place I go to look for feedback for a lot of reasons, but what I've noticed at Oregon Live is that no one actually uses their real name. Now, you may have a different experience, but I can't tell who is sending the comments. And if I can't tell who's sending the comments, I actually don't know whether they're my constituents.
And that's very fair.
So that's number one. And number two, I asked previously, and I think you were here for this, staff to tell me what's been the experience in other cities? Do they have a fee and how much? And I was struck by the fact that some cities actually charge more for this registration and have a different way of doing it. Can you tell me, because I'm sincerely interested, in what way do you feel that discussing this fee constitutes demonizing landlords? Because I'm sensitive to that issue in part because to me this seems like a straightforward issue. We can disagree about what kind of fee and how it's structured. I'd like to hear people say that there's a better way of doing it. But could you just tell me how in the course of this discussion about this particular fee, you believe landlords have been demonized?
You know, I think that that's a fair question. I think that the policies of council over the last couple of years have been very negative towards landlords, and I think that maybe the use of demonization was not the correct word to use in that.
Well, if you believe that this commissioner has demonized landlords as part of this discussion, I not only invite you, I insist that you call that out and let me know. Because that I think is we can have agreements or disagreements in this room.
Right.
We can have, in this current environment in this country, which I'm getting awfully sick of all the divisiveness and the negativity, we ought to be able to have a conversation. And if you feel put upon or somehow the climate's wrong, and if I'm contributing to that, I'm asking you to call me out.
Perfect. I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for coming back again. I remember your previous testimony, and I kind of want to join Commissioner Fish in saying it's not certainly my intent to demonize landlords. Some of my best friends are landlords, but seriously, friends, family, and we do have a number of supporters who are landlords. And I really admire and appreciate the way that you treat and serve your tenants and this kind of exceptional situation you've described. I'm wondering, it's a question for Bureau staff. If you have a unit that you don't collect rents on, would you be required to pay the fee? I also can't help but wonder if we could help your tenant connect with some services or supports they may qualify for, especially through the county. My question about your testimony is, why would your friend feel compelled to raise the rent more than 5 times the actual cost of the fee? It's a $60 fee, and $25 a month would be $300 annually.
That I can't answer that because obviously I can't speak for him.
Yeah.
What I can say is that anytime any commodity, the price of a commodity goes up, that's typically passed on to the end user. If the price of diesel to deliver bread to Fred Meyer's goes up, Fred Meyer's is going to pass that along for a loaf of bread at their store. And that's just typically the way businesses work. I think sometimes, in my opinion, landlords aren't necessarily looked at as small businesses. We're a small business. We're really not any different than any other a mechanic shop or a coffee shop or a restaurant. We're small business people, and I think, in my opinion, the attitude of this council in the last 2 years has been that we're in some way not a small business, that we're something different than that, and that we're not good people, and we are.
I certainly don't want you to leave these chambers thinking that. I was a small business owner for 22 years, and I'd say, in fact, I want landlords to recognize the fact that they are business owners. We hear from a lot of, especially small landlords, who feel like this is it's something they do on the side. It's almost more of a hobby or a supplement, and they feel that some of the regulations are forcing them to professionalize in a way they're not equipped to do. So I see you as a small business. I just question, I was lucky to be able to double my cost on anything. Granted, I had a bookstore, and books come with a pre-printed price on them. Unfortunately, rental units don't.
Yeah.
But I think that it's hard for me to take a comment, not you, but your friend's comment seriously, because that's just not reasonable.
So can I just to make a point, we're commercial realtors. We deal in small plex properties, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes mostly. 2 years ago, there were, if you could find a dozen duplexes on the market in close-in Northeast, Southeast, or Northeast Portland, Southeast, the close-in zip codes, you'd be lucky to find that. There was none on the market. I checked 2 days ago, there were 61 duplexes on the market in North, Northeast, and Southeast Portland, close-in zip codes. 5 or 6 of those were new product. So, a speculator developer had made those, and there were maybe a handful that were outside of 82nd. The rest were all very close to the downtown core. The feedback we get consistently is that the small mom and pops, the people that own a duplex, they own maybe 2 of them, don't want to deal with a lower barrier of entry, with security deposits, with amortization schedules, with rent control, and the sophistication level for them, they've decided to get out. So that takes inventory off the market, and it also adds costs.
Well, I don't think that we can draw a direct correlation between our regulations or policies and changes in the real estate market without adequate data, but I will say there's a plus side to having more housing on the market.
No, I don't disagree with you at all.
And that rental services office will actually help landlords navigate these rule changes. So it kind of supports this item. We should
Great.
probably move along, but it's
Yeah,
been nice
I
talking
appreciate
to
your
you.
time. I really do.
Thank you for your courtesy.
Yeah, this was a good discussion.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm Kathy Rogers. This fee in and of itself may not seem like a huge deal, but I think, as Mark alluded to, coming on the heels of everything else that's been thrown at landlords over the last 2 years, it feels a lot like the straw that's breaking the camel's back. And I think a lot of small landlords feel like all of the costs and fees and complexity are being dumped on the landlord and not shared by the tenant. If this is to support the Rental Services Commission, which I've been in contact with, and as far as I can tell, about 90% of what they do supports tenants. Why are the tenants not paying the fee? How about with every lease renewal, the tenant pays the $60 fee? Why is it 100% paid by landlords is my first question. With the mandatory renter relocation assistance, the elimination of no-cause notice evictions, rent control, new tenant screening ordinances, which our attorney can't even figure out, and he's a real estate attorney, the security deposit ordinance, the rental registration program, and this has all come on to us in the last 2 years. The URM placarding ordinance, which was overturned in a federal court, and now this. It's very difficult to navigate. And I will tell you that a lot of small landlords are afraid to rent out their properties. They're afraid of being sued. They're afraid of not following the rules. A lot of the single family and duplexes that are being sold are now being purchased by owner occupants. Those are rental units that are being taken off of the market. We never used to raise our rents every year. We have to now. Every year on the anniversary, 100% of the time, we raise our rents to the 100% maximum that we're allowed to do because of the actions taken by this city council. And we never used to do that. So I just want you to think about everything you're throwing at us may be hurting the people you're trying to protect.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Michael Havlick. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for Multifamily Northwest. The members of Multifamily Northwest make up 40% of Oregon's rental housing supply, and as such, we are the leaders in property management and development within the state. Prior to joining Multifamily Northwest, I worked for several property management firms and Home Forward as Director of Asset Management. I have a passion for housing, affordability, and rental services, and I've spent my life dedicated to it. All told, I have 26 years of experience in property management, including conventional multifamily housing, affordable tax credit, public housing, permanent supportive housing, as well as special needs housing. My association members are dismayed with the current rendition of the proposed rental registration fee. It is yet another layer of tax on housing, adding costs to a market already in crisis. Not only is the amount proposed excessive at $60 per unit, but it offends common sense that the implementation of a registration system will cost millions of dollars each year. Commissioner Fish, you asked about fees. For the comparable 200-unit property in Seattle, the fee is $575, or $2.88 a unit, compared to $12,000 for the comparable 200-unit property in the city of Portland. In other words, the city of Portland's rate will be over 20 times the amount of Seattle. We estimate that by year 10 of this fee scheme, the city of Portland will have collected $58 million that will do nothing to create more affordable housing. It's ultimately a tax on renters, impacting those most who have lower incomes and do not have the good fortune of living in regulated affordable housing, which receives the special carve-out. With a housing supply shortage, what rational jurisdiction would mete out punitive disincentives to housing providers? The city of Portland is creating inequity across all rental housing providers by imposing a fee for the sole purpose of funding multiple duplicative programs already implemented or addressed by other better-equipped agencies. If you're truly striving to provide solutions to the problem for the lack of affordable housing across the continuum of housing, then you would continue the path outlined by the legislature through House Bill 2001 and 2003, which both work to create diverse, inclusive, and vibrant housing opportunities throughout our city. Additionally, the city should reassess its posture towards housing providers it has demonized over the last several years. These providers are a big piece of the solution, and you should view our members as willing partners in the goal of making housing more affordable and accessible to all Portlanders. Thank you.
Thank you. Next three, please. Thank you for your testimony.
Are Jill Warren, Chris Wynn, and Margot Black.
Would you like to go ahead and start, please? Thank you.
Good afternoon,
Afternoon.
Mayor and Commissioners. My name's Jill Warren, And I'm a mom and pop landlord in the city of Portland for the past 30 years. And we have 34 units. So at $60 per unit, we'll be paying $2,040 a year to support the program. I just think that's too high, $60 per unit. And I appreciate the previous conversation about the demonization. I feel that some of the mandates that are being brought down by this body is actually, it hurts our industry. Like, for example, that, you don't want us to factor in the criminal background for a tenant. And that's very dangerous. I just screened an applicant, and he had 17 pages of felony convictions, including felon in possession of a firearm, theft, burglary, possession of methamphetamine. And to protect the safety of my tenants, that is my primary goal, is their welfare and their safety. So that's why I screen. I mean, it's all about screening. And also the mandate to pick the first applicant that comes along. I mean, that's not very intelligent to do that. I mean, that's why we screen, is so that, I run a criminal check, I do a background search, I check your credit history and your previous and current landlord referrals. So I just throw that all in a pot and I stir it up, and that's how I determine their eligibility. So I appreciate our discussion on this, and thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
Mayor,
Commissioner Daly.
if I may, I'm interested in hearing people's feedback on this item, but I can't allow this forum to be used to spread misinformation about our policy. We are not requiring landlords to not consider prior convictions. That's a choice. And the first come, first served is first come, first to qualify. We're not requiring landlords to literally rent their units to the first person that applies. So those are two false statements that you made, and I just want to ask everyone else who comes up here to try to avoid spreading misinformation. Let's debate the real issues. Let's debate the policy that's in front of us.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Wen. I'm the Director of Operations for Commerce Properties, and
Sorry,
let's talk about. Sorry?
I'm sorry, bring the mic a little closer.
Oh.
I couldn't hear you.
Hi, my name is Chris Wen. I'm the Director of Operations for Commerce Properties.
Thank you.
And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the potential impact of this fee on the market and quality of rental housing in Portland. So we believe that the proposed rental fee will be harmful to Portland renters by reducing new development in low to moderate priced rental housing, producing upward pressure on housing cost, and reducing the quality of existing rental housing. This tax, combined with additional state and local legislation introduced over the last few years, makes it difficult for housing providers to provide affordable housing, and it reduces the incentive to develop new units or keep existing units on the market. A good example of this is my next door neighbor who has been occupying his house with his wife and 2 kids for the last 4 years, is moving out in August because the existing owner, and I don't know the owner's reasoning for putting the house on the market, but it's on the market now. Just wanted to put that out there. The proposed rental fee is essentially a tax on renters. I think we've heard that said a couple times. Since rents inevitably adjust to align with the cost of providing housing. An example of, you can look at, for instance, the current tariffs imposed by the White House, how the cost of consumer goods have exponentially increased because of the tariffs, as an example of what adding any extra fees can do to the end user.
By the way, I'm very glad you just said that, because the White House keeps saying that the tariffs are designed to punish the host country, and yet we know that the cost is passed on to the consumer, and we're actually seeing extraordinary inflation in things like in speculative products like steel. Mm-hmm. The costs that we're bearing as a city in projects where they're using steel are going through the roof, because people are betting that they're going to go way up because of the tariffs, and yet the line out of Washington is tariffs are punishing the host country, not the consumer. So I'm pleased that you brought us back to Economics 101.
I can tell you that I pay $150 more for actually, let me correct that. I pay $78 more for a water heater, a comparable water heater, now than I did before the introduction of those tariffs. So, and then lastly, the proposed rental fee reduces funds available for maintenance. This tax, for the company I work for, will have a $27,000 annual impact. This fee could hire a part-time maintenance technician, could allow us to replace 23 carpets, allow us to put appliances in 16 apartment homes. So this means that many housing providers will have to choose to, or will not have to choose, but they'll have to pay fees with funds that they would have normally used to improve or maintain existing housing.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Margot Black. I'm from Portland Tenants United, a registered lobby organization with the City of Portland. I'm also a member of the Rental Services Commission. I'm here to testify today in support of the rental registration fee with some minor reservations, but I'm going to bypass most of my testimony just to respond to a couple of the concerns that I've heard come before Council so far. And one, Commissioner Fritz, just so you know, fees are strictly regulated by the state, and the landlords of Portland would not be able to explicitly pass this fee on in their lease as a fee. However, I just got a 90-day notice for a $150 rent increase that will start this November. I'll be paying that $150 every single month. One of the reasons my landlord gave me for that was increased fees by City Council. I'm not even sure if she knows about this one yet. She could pay that fee twice every single month. And that's something we have to remember, is that rents are still allowed to go up by 10% or more every year, and our median rents are around $1,500 a month, which means they'll be going up by about $150 a month. And frankly, as a tenant, every time we hear about tenant protections or things that are going to help tenants costing us money and ultimately hurting us, when my rent can already go up by hundreds of dollars a month, I would much rather some of that money be going to the city to provide programs and services for renters than just going in my landlord's pocket. The other thing I wanted to come up and talk about today was the expanded rental registration system, and make sure that council understands that this fee is currently covering a very limited bare bones rental registration system, as was already discussed earlier by folks from the Housing Bureau. I want to remind council how limited that system is and how not useful it is in solving the problems that this rental registration system is supposed to be able to solve. We need to collect data on rents. We need to collect data on vacancy and turnover, on size of units, on no-cause and for-cause evictions, rent increases, late fees, which tenants are charged often in excess of $60 a month. Which again is far more than this fee will be charged to to landlords. So please support this fee, but or vote for this fee. But please remember what work hasn't been done and who is not being protected and whose needs aren't being met until we have that expanded rental registration system in place, which was promised, which is needed, and which is not being met yet with our current system and with this fee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, all three of you. Next three, please, Carmen.
Are Alan Hines, Nico Serra, and Pam Fan.
Good afternoon.
I am on the Rental Services Commission. I asked my testimony to be cut out so that you can follow along.
Alan, I wanted to make sure you all got his written testimony so you can follow along.
I work as a mentor to support people with disabilities to find safety and housing. I am here today to assess the critical need for the extended rental registry and encourage council to allocate funding for this system as soon as possible. I am going to share a story of a participant of my organization as to illustrate why we need the registry. To collect more information about accessible housing. The participant secured a grant to cover housing recently. The grant was for $450, which is about 65% of MRI. And once the grant was awarded, the participant had a limited time frame to find the housing for her and her kid. Over the course of 7 weeks, we searched various housing websites, property management websites. The participant used Facebook groups and Craigslist. We were searching all over the place to find this person accessible unit for themselves and their kid. It was 6 weeks into the process before we were able to find a unit that worked for them. And that was all only because the participant was able to find a unit that had not been listed as available. They got really lucky. So, my conclusion is that we need to be able to know what accessible units are in the city. We have no idea. Right now, it's a needle in a haystack situation to find accessible housing. So I want to encourage this body to really support the expanding rental registry so that we can collect this data and know where the units are that we need. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners. My name is Nico Sara. I'm a white-passing, mixed-race, queer, and transgender person with disabilities. I use they pronouns. I volunteer with people with disabilities as a board member at Real Choice Initiative with Alan. I'm here to show my support for the rental registry and talk about the critical need for the fully funded, publicly accessible, expanded rental registry that includes accessibility and price ranges for each unit, which, as I understand from your comments, Mayor Wheeler, is going to be included in the fall bump. All right?
I can't commit that on behalf of the council, but there will certainly be a proposal that I'll put forward.
So when I arrived in Portland back in 2010, I was a rock climber, a hiker, a snowboarder, among other things. But that all changed with one bicycle ride about 6 weeks after I got here. Although I was doing everything right, I was wearing a helmet, I was following the rules, I was in the right place on the road, I was looking around and aware of my surroundings, a person driving a station wagon wasn't paying attention, and he hit me when I was riding my bicycle, and he kept driving and turned a corner. I just barely missed hitting my head on an electrical box when I fell to the ground. The timing of moving to a new state and being hit by a car was made so much worse. As the most supportive member of my family, my father was killed in a high-profile plane crash just a few years earlier, and I had just started my transition from female to male. Like most queer and transgender people of color, I was essentially disowned by my family regardless of the fact I had just been hit by a car. In just a few minutes, my life was forever changed. I never understood the importance of accessible housing until I had to crawl around on my hands and knees and scoot around on my bottom to access 5 of the 8 bedrooms that I've lived in here in Portland. I've had to leave my power wheelchair outside, where it once became infested with rats. It was disgusting and unbearable, and I couldn't clean it every time I needed to go out, so it smelled bad everywhere I went. I spent hundreds of dollars creating makeshift ramps to get wheelchairs inside, only to be told that when I got a prescription for a power wheelchair, Medicare Medicaid law says that you have to have an ADA accessible unit in order to get your power chair. So I had to wait years to get that. And I appreciate you giving me some extra time here. Thank you. I can't tell you how frustrating it is to pay $800 a month to live in a unit I can't actually use. These stories of making do are abundant in the disability community, and we live through these humiliating experiences because there's no way for us to find housing that we can afford. The rental registry is a tool that will help the most vulnerable people at just $5 a month. 60 divided by 12 is $5 a month. In addition to tracking these units, the registry would tell us where the housing stock is and provide us essential data to tell us what policy decisions need to be made in the future to create more accessible housing. Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, I assure you my story is not unique. Any one of you or your family members could be in my shoes tomorrow. In fact, when we talk to your staffers and lobbyists and with the landlords, every single group that we talked with had a story about a family member that needed accessible housing. So I'm here to ask, if we all know that we need this accessible housing, can we at least start tracking where it is? We all need it. So I encourage everyone in the room to think about people in their family or their friends that need this accessible, affordable housing. We deserve to live lives of dignity just like you, when you will get to the point where your bodies will change and you will need it too. Disability disproportionately affects people of color and other vulnerable populations. We need this registry. In fact, the expanded version with accessibility pricing will be very helpful for us, and I'm excited to hear that you will be bringing this forward in the fall bump. Thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it. Carla, how many more folks do we have signed up? Thank you both.
Four more at least.
Okay, very good.
Before I call the next 3, was there a Pam on Northeast 63rd? Oh, Pam. And then we'll go with Jessica Greenlee, Sarah Iannarone, and Mary Sight.
Jessica, do you want to go ahead and start, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jessica Greenlee, and I'm with Affinity Property Management. And I just wanted to point out a couple of things regarding the rental registration fee that I have some concerns around after hearing a lot about this in the Rental Services Commission. One being that a third of the cost for the rental registration fee is being dedicated just to administrative and software costs. Right now, there is not a line item in here for inspections, which is where the majority of rental registration fees typically go in other cities. And I'm sure that that is a program that eventually will be rolled out. So we're definitely starting at the high end at a $60 mark for a per unit fee. The other major concern that I have is that this is rolling out at the same time as properties are incurring a lot of other additional expenses associated with legislative changes. This fee represents about 10 to 15% of the overall increase in costs that properties will bear due to some of the changes regarding the screening criteria and the security deposit ordinance. And rolling this out at the same time is definitely adding to that level of burden and making it that much more challenging for performers to work out for new supply. Also, the fact that it's essentially charging for the past year, so it's going into effect as a retroactive fee. So those are just some things that I hope that you would consider as you look at this proposal. It's obviously there are some great services and programs that the rental services officers are operating, and that there'll be expanded need in the future. And so fully focusing on funding the rental services office just through a registration fee, I think is quite likely not feasible when you look at the expansion of what those program needs will be in the future.
Great. Thank you for coming in. Sarah, you want to go ahead?
Yes. Hi, my name's Sarah Iannaroon. Nice to see you all. I'm here to testify in support of the proposed $60 per unit fee, but with caveats. To ensure an adequate housing stock, municipalities need to be able to design and implement policy driven by best practices based on complete data. I appreciate what we've done so far to have landlords register with the city and file business taxes, but we need to think beyond that. I appreciate the effort to create a permanent funding stream via the proposed flat registration fee, maintaining rental services office, but there's an opportunity here for us to move the rental registration program out of the half-kept promises column and start collecting all of the necessary data we need to ensure an adequate supply of the right mix of affordable rental housing in our city. I'm hoping that City Council will approve this fee when it comes up for a vote, recognizing it is not nearly sufficient. We need to circle back on this in the fall bump. Thanks for your commitment to that, Mayor Wheeler, and aggressively expand the rental registration program, making investments in the software, program administration to fund the additional data collection that we need. State-level policy hinges on us setting up a system that provides the right information that we need, but we're not collecting. If Portland is going to be serious about realizing the right mix of rental housing supply, we need to move beyond the base funding and gather expanded data for our decision-making. So please support what we're doing today, but don't stop there. You need to commit to implementing via the fall bump the robust data collection mechanism and a public-facing dashboard that delivers to our community the vital information we need for a thorough understanding of the rental landscape in our community.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
My name's Mary Sipe. I support this fee. I'm very much in support of the rental services office, and I've heard a lot of really good testimony today and a lot of really good feedback. And in the past, it's been my observation on most of these ordinances that you've been working on, especially relating to rental tenants and landlords, that you've taken feedback and you've gone back to the drawing board and you've amended and you've made changes and you've modified. And I can see where I think the testimony today gives you the opportunity to maybe go back and work on this a little bit more and address some of the issues and concerns. I was sitting here kind of thinking, you know, how do you come up with the $60 fee? And to me, you need to identify really how much funding do you need. Is the first year going to be the most money because of the technology that you need to buy? And then you kind of back into how much the fee needs to be once you know how much money you need to have. So I just want to encourage you to, once again, I definitely want to see this move forward. You know, we're talking about $60. I was confused because on one hand, people are talking about passing this on to the tenant, and then on the other hand, I hear that it can't be passed on to the tenant. So I think we need some clarity there. And again, I just want to support it and ask you to do your due diligence once again.
Thank you. Commissioner Daly.
Mary, the distinction is the landlords can't add a $60 fee to the lease, but they can certainly roll it into a rent increase.
That's what I thought.
Within the constraints of the local and state. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Was there one more person, Carla?
Yes, last person was Katrina Holland.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Greetings, council members, Mayor Wheeler. Thank you for the opportunity to, for the record, my name is Katrina Holland, Executive Director of Community Alliance of Tenants. Again, thank you for the opportunity to sit before you today to talk about rental registration. I'm pretty sure you will not be surprised to know that CAT is very supportive of this effort, both when it comes to the fact that we will finally have a reliable source of information available to collect and understand housing data within the city of Portland, and when it comes to the fee. However, as I did voice in the Rental Services Commission meeting, we think that it is absolutely imperative that we understand that this fee in comparison to what the city needs is actually really low. Considering the degree of programming members of the RSC are advising on and asking for to support the rental market, again, this fee is very low. When it comes to the variety of services that both landlords and tenants are asking from the city, we don't believe that $60 per door would cover the cost, considering the degree of revenue options available to us from the state and from local government. I'm just not sure where the extra money is realistically going to come from to support these critical asks for services requested, again, by both landlords and tenants. Assessing this fee also makes sense because we will start to lessen the burden of taxpayers, footing most of the, if not all the bills that the city currently incurs in supporting landlords and tenants to understand their rights. It is a common argument that we hear from managers that the externalities caused by the rental market should be mitigated by government intervention, even if the direct benefit to market actors materializes in a way that is individual or for a select few. The cost to provide requested programming is very expensive, and to expect taxpayers to continue footing most of the bill has been necessary because we had no choice. But now that this option exists, I think that it makes sense. We also think it's unfair to make services for half the population in Portland who are renters and an unknown amount of landlords rely on volatile, non-guaranteed, politically fraught, one-time funding mechanisms when we know that these critical services are needed on an ongoing basis. Existing landlords and tenants need information on their rights for housing education and enforcement is critical on both ends, and serving our most vulnerable populations who have little to no access to legal support only makes sense. So we support this fee. We hope that, thank you for your commitment to evaluate whether it is enough. We do hope that this fee goes up, given the actual costs that it's going to cost to maintain services requested by both landlords and tenants. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. That completes testimony. This is a first reading, so we're going to move it. Is there anything else before we do so? Very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you, everyone who testified today. Next item, please, 728.
Amend Vehicles and Traffic and Public Improvements codes to add necessary clarification and update language to align with current city practices.
Commissioner Daly.
Oh, boy. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
PBOT staff occasionally identify the need to clarify and update city code. PBOT staff are bringing updates to multiple sections of Title 16 and 17 to council for consideration and adoption. These changes are primarily administrative in nature to address changing bureau practices, updates to out-of-date terminology, or to clarify previously ambiguous code. PBOT staff member Matt Burkow is here to answer any questions that the council may have. Welcome, and please state your name for the record.
Great. I'm Matt Burkow. I'm with the Development Permitting and Transit Group at PBOT. So yeah, we assembled a number of updates to city code. These are a combination of cleanup, clarification, and a few that are more substantive. So I could step through the impact statement if that would be helpful to just walk through each one. Okay, great. So the first one to 16.20 public right-of-way parking. First element of this is we have a lot of areas of our code that reference meter hoods. We no longer use parking meters, so this is an example of cleanup. Just changing the language. We don't use meter hoods to reserve parking spaces anymore. The other thing that was in this code is the authority to issue parking reservation permits. We revised this to be with the director of the Bureau of Transportation. This just matches the authority at the Bureau. It used to be the city engineer and the city traffic engineer. We've updated Title 17 with this in the past, so this is just making Title 16 consistent with that. And the other element in here is we remove reference to the Special Traffic Control District. What this is the downtown area. We used to have development activity mostly concentrated downtown, so we would regulate the closing of parking spaces with Vision Zero, with the city's commitment to ensuring that we accommodate people walking and bicycling through construction zones. We now manage parking throughout the city. So this change reflects the expanded authority of temporary street use permitting citywide. That's the first one. Okay. And this second element of 16.90 was, again, just referencing meter hoods. 16.50, vehicles allowed on the transit mall. You may recall that a few months back, we came to you with an emergency ordinance to allow for the closure of the auxiliary vehicular lanes on the transit mall. So currently, it is not permitted to close those lanes between 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., kind of maintaining vehicle access on the transit mall. But periodically, there is a need for construction and otherwise to close it. So this is just granting the authority for short-term, 3 days or less closures, provided with TriMet's approval. We're working on a subsequent admin rule that will kind of clarify that the applicant needs to demonstrate why they can't perform this work either on private property or on the weekends or nights. The next one was a very simple cleanup where we changed the name of a position, and so we're just making the code consistent. It removed one word from the title of a position. So I'm flipping to the next page. 1715, this is our transportation system development charges. There was a confusion where TSDC discounts would be applicable, particularly in some overlay districts. So this is clarifying that it kind of read that a discount would not be applicable in these overlay districts, and that is just referring to the citywide SDCs. The discount is applicable, so just clarifying that the discount is not applicable to the particular SDCs, the North Macadam Innovation Quadrant SDC. So it's just a clarification of that code. Another clarification for sidewalk cafes, the sidewalk cafe language says that cafe furniture must be placed on hard surfaces. We added that, but not in the driveway approaches. So if there's a driveway, people are sometimes extending their cafe into that. So we're just making that clear for people. 1788080. So we had the Gateway Master Street Plan. This was existed as code, and the typical practice is when we then update our TSP, the Transportation System Plan, we amend the TSP to reflect the Master Street Plan, which renders this piece of code no longer necessary. So we're removing that. The 1788090, this is about the Local Transportation Infrastructure Charge, LTIC. So we removed the previously added provision G. The change was initially recommended by the Office of the Ombudsman. However, staff have found that this program could have unintended negative consequences on property owners, and this is a provision that has never been used. And the next one was another 17107.020. This is another cleanup. It referenced a policy of the TSP. TSP was updated recently. That number changed, so we had to change the number here. So that was simple cleanup. Finally, 17109, relocation benefit appeals. This creates a process where, in the rare instances that the city has to relocate somebody off of their property, that they have a process where they can appeal the benefits that are proposed for them.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's pretty straightforward. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great.
Any further questions? Any public testimony on this item, Carla?
No one signed up.
So I know this is actually kind of tedious work going through and cleaning up old code, but thank you for doing it. It's obviously important that it be done well, and we had a code change in front of the council a week or two ago, and we noticed that there was still some cleanup to be done on it, so I appreciate the thoroughness with which you put into this. Thank you. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thanks for your hard work.
Thanks very much.
Next item, 729.
Vacate Southeast 64th Avenue south of Southeast Sherman Street, subject to certain conditions and reservations.
Do you have any open Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. Portland Parks and Recreation will be renovating and reconstructing the Mount Tabor Maintenance Yard, and as part of the improvements, PP&R plans to construct a multimodal path on city property to connect Mount Tabor Park to Southeast Division Street. This connection has been a city goal for decades, and in 2010, the path was also included on the Portland Bicycle Plan for 2030. So it looks like we're going to beat that deadline. Very exciting. Carl Aruda, right-of-way agent with PBOT, is here to present, and someone else is here as well, whose name I do not have, and maybe you're not even Carl.
No, I am. Yes,
Oh, good.
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, welcome, Carl, and please state your name for the record.
Thanks. Yes, I'm Carl Aruda, a right-of-way agent with PBOT.
Hi, my name is Robin Laughlin. I'm the bond program manager. I'm with Portland Parks and Recreation. I'm managing the park improvement project here.
Cool.
Thank you.
And so thank you, Commissioner Udaly and Mayor Wheeler and commissioners. As you mentioned, this is a street vacation proposal connected with the Mount Tabor Park and Maintenance Yard renovations. This vacation proposal was initiated by the Parks Bureau as part of their renovation project. So the ordinance before you would eliminate a small piece of Southeast 64th Avenue just south of Southeast Sherman Street, where 64th dead ends at the maintenance yard. So this piece is no longer needed for street purposes, and PBOT has no intentions and has not had any intentions of pushing a full street through to Division Street. And so as part of the project, PBOT was agreeable to vacating this. And so by vacating it, the east half of this vacation area would go to the Parks Bureau, and where they would be able to use that for their multimodal bicycle and pedestrian path to connect Mount Tabor to Division Street. And as Commissioner Udaly mentioned, this has been a city goal for a number of years. PP&R completed a conditional use review as part of the maintenance plan to include this piece of the vacation area in Mount Tabor Park and to get authorization to put the multimodal path through this area. As part of the usual vacation process, we contacted city bureaus and other agencies for comments. We also notified neighbors in the designated affected area prior to the Planning and Sustainability Commission hearing, and also again prior to this hearing. As part of the comments, PBOT staff requested that we reserve what we call a springing trail easement over the pathway, so that if the maintenance yard area was ever sold off or transferred to a different entity, the pathway would be maintained as a public trail. The Bureau of Environmental Services has also requested sewer easements for a sewer pipe that goes down pretty much the center of that part of Sherman Street. So again, the BES will have the easements to protect the pipe, and it'll be about 7.5 feet wide on each side of the pipe. The west half of this vacation area will revert to the two adjacent property owners on the west side, and they've both been notified of the project and they're aware of the proposal. We have a few images here, where the first image here shows the overall plan that Robin's been working on. The orange area here shows the piece of the path going from Division Street up to the vacation area in here, and then continuing on a narrower path up towards the park. These are some renderings provided nicely by Robin, showing the view after construction is finished. The first image should be the view if you were standing in Division Street looking towards the park. You would see the pathway going up northwards. The second image is if once you're on the path and looking into what is now Southeast 64th Avenue, the vacation area, you would see a wide path leading up towards the remaining piece of 64th Avenue. Part 3, after you leave the vacation area, the pathway would continue as a narrower sidewalk type area and 64th Avenue is over there on the left. And then the fourth image is just a different view of that corner of 64th and Sherman Street, where the vacation area leads onto the street into the narrower pathway. This is an aerial photo showing the area in yellow being vacated with a maintenance yard off to the right and Division Street down below. And the pathway would go again from through the yard, through the vacation area, and then up along the area on 64th. This is some photos of the current configuration of Sherman Street and 64th on the left, and the maintenance yard in the distance there. And the next photo is more of a close-up area of the part of the maintenance yard. And if you were standing in the vacation area, part of it, this is where you would see Sherman Street off to the left there, and the other photo from the maintenance yard part of the vacation area. Again, you're looking towards Sherman and 64th area, and so this photo was taken from where the pathway will eventually be constructed. And again, this is looking towards the other direction. This grassy area on both of these photos is basically part of what is now legally 64th Avenue, and would be vacated. And the fence area is, I think, pretty much down the center of what is 64th Avenue of the vacation area. And so the maintenance part over there will be reverting to parks, and the grassy area is what basically would be reverting to the owners on the west side. And then the spring trail easement I mentioned, this is the approximate location of that where the pathway will be constructed by the Parks Bureau from Division towards the park. And then the more slender sewer easement area for the pipe down the center of the street. And I don't know, Robin, if you have anything else you wanted to add, or if there are any questions.
I just wanted to express my gratitude to this body for their continued support of the 2014 Parks Replacement Bond. This project that we're working on is a Mount Tabor Yard facility improvement. It was under the theme of Protect Our Workers. It's a very important piece of the bond work that we're doing here through our land use process. This was a requirement that we dedicate this full-time to multimodal use for our community, and we're really looking forward to providing that, hopefully next summer, and have been really appreciating Carl's support throughout this about year and a half long process. So thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the project.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you for being here, both of you. Rob and I just, this morning we had 4 different audits that the auditor presented, and I was reflecting on the Parks Bond, and I'm just really proud of how it's gone. This is a great example of how we're doing what we said we were going to do in taking care of the workers. In every single project I think we've done something that makes it better. It's not just fixing, which we said we were going to fix our parks, but we're adding value and making it even better. So the multimodal path is a great example of that, where people might have said, you know, this is just benefiting the workers, what's in it for the public? Of course, it's good for the public, for workers to have safe places to work, but it's also, through the partnership with PBOT, going to be a really great amenity for the neighborhood. So thank you both for all of your work on this.
Just one comment, Mayor.
Commissioner Fish.
You know, for 10 years, almost like a broken record, I'm used to people saying that there's something fundamentally flawed in our form of government, that everyone lives in some kind of silo, which I'm still looking to see where that address is, and that no one ever works together. And then we get a presentation like this, and I was struck by the fact, as you were sort of making the presentation, talking about all the bureaus that had an interest and how you were coordinating and how this is working out. And it's like, yeah, it's not necessarily the form of government. The way this form of government works is by having people actually talk to each other. And there's nothing inherent in our form of government which prevents bureaus from collaborating at a very high level. And I just appreciate a presentation like this to remind us that our system does work when there are respectful relationships across bureaus at the staff level in particular. And we can resolve what is a mind-numbing, I mean, about halfway through your presentation, I felt like I mean, I was starting to get a headache. It was the level of detail, but these are very complicated things, yet nothing prevented us from getting it right. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good. Carla, was there any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Too bad. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thanks for your great work on this.
Thank you.
Next up, 7:30.
Vacate a portion of Southwest 9th Avenue between Southwest Gibbs Street and Southwest U.S. Veterans Hospital Road, subject to certain conditions and reservations.
Very good. And colleagues, just by way of presentations, I want to remind you we have one, actually that's a second reading, 1, 2, 3, 4 non-second readings remaining after this, just by way of time check.
So,
Commissioner Daley.
thank you, Mayor. The petitioner for this street vacation is the owner of the abutting property to the east and west of the street area. All the vacation area will revert to the parcels that they own to the west. PBOT, should be able to say that right. PBOT right-of-way agent.
Been a long day, that's all right.
It has, I'm lagging. Lance Lindahl is here to present, as well as the petitioner's architect and project manager. In interest of time, I just encourage you to keep it real tight. So welcome, and please state your names for the record as you share your testimony.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll go ahead and start off. Again, my name is Lance Lindahl, PBOT Right-of-Way Acquisition. Before you today is a proposal to vacate a portion of Southwest 9th Avenue between Southwest Gibbs Street and Southwest U.S. Veterans Hospital Road. In this slide, you can see the vacation area shown in yellow. This area is located to the immediate west of the OHSU Markham Hill campus. The vacation area is currently impassable due to the presence of dense vegetation and steep elevation changes. No PBOT facilities or improvements are currently located there. This graphic's been provided by the applicant to me. It shows that an improved street at this location would have a grade change of approximately 32%, and that's well in excess of the 18% maximum street grade allowed in our code for Fire Bureau access. 2 city bureaus have responded with conditions of approval. BES has required that the petitioner grant a 15-foot wide easement over an existing sewer main, and that can be seen here. It's on the far right side. It's the purple line. And also the Water Bureau has imposed fees to cover the expense for them to cut and plug the existing water main. It's the blue line in the center there. And also for relocating a fire hydrant, which is a blue dot. That's a little tough to see. That's in the lower right-hand corner there. The petitioner has agreed to all of these terms, and they have already paid the fees to the Water Bureau for this work to be completed. Approval of this vacation will allow the petitioner to move forward with plans to develop a small hotel at this site. And Barry Smith, the project architect's here, as well as Matt Wand, who's the counsel for Yoshida Group. And they can provide you with additional information or questions. Feel free to ask. Thank you.
My name is Ed Tromke with Jordan Ramus. I'm outside counsel to Yoshida Group. The architects are in the back if you'd like. We're here only to answer questions. Matt Wand is beside me, in-house counsel. We ask that you approve this. It will provide for a 99-room medium to long-term stay hotel for use by people who are making use of the OHSU facilities because they have patients who are family members or friends, or they may have business that takes them a week, 2 weeks, a couple months at the OHSU, and it'll keep people off of Sam Jackson Parkway and alleviate some traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Daly.
That sounds fantastic. As someone who has spent far more time than I ever wanted to at Dornbecker Children's Hospital, I know it'll be a real benefit to families to have lodging adjacent to the facilities.
I have a question for the attorney. Is there a specific contractual covenant that the owner is entering into with OHSU to provide this service?
I'm going to lean to in-house counsel to clarify that. Because
Matt Wand, General Counsel to Yoshida's Inc. Not at this time. We've outreached to them. They're cooperative and supportive, but we haven't entered into any contracts yet.
I'm not sure there necessarily needs to be because the use is for that area.
Right.
People won't be staying there as a bed and breakfast to be in downtown. It's not very
Right.
convenient. So they may or may not enter into some long-term commitments for that particular use, but it's there, it's right across the street from Dornbecker's, so it really is for use of people up there on the hill.
In terms of vacating a piece of property, though, do we have to be able to demonstrate some kind of nexus to a public benefit? No?
Right now, state statute just says that we have to demonstrate that there's not a current transportation use for the property.
Right. And probably the only use would be for four-wheel off-road vehicles. It is very, very steep.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm usually very skeptical of street vacations because it's giving up a public right, but this one is about the most open and shut one I've seen, regardless of what it's used for. Even if it's used for nothing, it clearly is not going to be used for transportation. Is it zoned correctly? Do we know what the zoning is?
Yes, it is. And approval has been given almost a year ago for the hotel. This is just one of the last conditions to be satisfied in order to get the hotel going.
Brilliant.
The hotel was, there was discussion by the neighborhood association. No appeal was filed, and so it's been sitting on the shelf waiting for this and a couple of other small issues to be resolved.
And Lance, I assume that you notified the neighborhood association. Did you hear back from them?
We did
one way or
not
the
hear
other?
back. I have heard back from a couple of the neighbors in the area who own adjacent properties. They were all very supportive of the project.
Thank you.
Just one more question. Did you say
Commissioner
that the
Fisher.
owner is the Yoshida Group?
Yes,
Is that Mr. Junkie Yoshida?
it is.
You're nodding, so just for the record.
Yes, it is.
And I have an association between Mr. Yoshida and some food products and some other things he's done. Does he have other properties like this in the region?
I don't know what you mean by other properties like this. He owns several commercial properties and multifamily residential and his residence. So he does own other properties, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. This looks good. This looks like a very promising project, and I'm glad that the city can be a help in a small way.
The city has been very helpful in the whole project, so we thank you for that.
Glad to hear that.
Yes.
Very definitely glad to hear. It's good to see you, Matt. Very good. Is there any public testimony on this item, Carla?
No one signed up.
Very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you. Next up, S731.
Amend Public Improvements Code to permit the attachment of wireless facilities on poles.
Colleagues, this is a second reading. There's already been a presentation and public testimony on this item. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Next item, 732, also a second reading.
Amend contract with TriMet for $6,571,781 to provide for enhanced upkeep and security of the Portland Transit Mall and the original light rail transit loop segment of First Avenue, Morrison, and Yamhill Streets.
Any further discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Udaly?
Well, I have an exciting update to share before I give my vote. As you know, the city is working with the Central East Side Industrial Council on an innovative security model for their enhanced service district, known as their Safety for All program. It requires a security contractor to engage in a very different way with people experiencing houselessness and mandates trauma-informed trainings, a situational protocol to minimize unnecessary police contacts, and inclusion of people experiencing houselessness as security personnel. I'm excited to share that the Portland Transit Mall, all three that for the Portland Transit Mall, all three parties, the city, TriMet, and PMMI, are committing to opening a competitive bid for security services in fiscal year 2021 that will integrate the lessons learned from the CEIC Safety for All program into the new contract to promote a more compassionate security model that benefits all users of the Transit Mall. I want to thank Catherine Levine, PBOT's Streetcar Division Manager, for making this request happen, and to the Compassionate Change District Coalition for envisioning and pushing for a better way to enhance a community that benefits everyone. I vote aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 733, also a second reading.
Authorize the Water Bureau to acquire certain property and easements necessary for construction of the corrosion control improvements project through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority as a last resort.
Commissioner Fritz, it's my understanding that this is going to be rescheduled. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and a time has not yet been determined at this
Correct.
point?
We're working with the attorney and the property owner.
Okay, very good. So we will move on then to 734. Is that sufficient, legal counsel? 734 next, please.
Authorize exchange agreement with the USDA Forest Service to execute a land exchange in the Bull Run watershed.
Colleagues, this is also a second reading. There's been a presentation and testimony. This took place while I was out of town. I've reviewed the record. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Udaley.
Aye.
Fritz.
Well, I am really excited, and I'm glad to see Water Bureau staff here because I know that there's going to be a lot of celebrating tonight. Thank you, colleagues. This is the last vote of a 10-year process. And this land swap has required consultation with the Warm Springs tribe and with the Grand Ronde. Thank you to Laura John, our tribal liaison, for her work in coordinating discussions with Warm Springs and Grand Ronde, and for her continued work across the city supporting our goals of equity. We do intend to continue to work with First Peoples in all city projects, in particular in the Bull Run watershed, to make sure that our actions also benefit First Peoples and not only the city. Thank you also to Edward Campbell, the Director of Resource Protection and Planning, who walked us through the overview of this work a few weeks ago. Fun fact, he used to be Commissioner Saltzman's Chief of Staff and has really been part of this process since its conception. So again, massive thanks to Edward for his work coordinating with the Water Bureau, the United States Department of Agriculture Forest Service, and other stakeholders. Thank you, Richard Perlman, the Mount Hood National Forest Supervisor, who worked with us very diligently also. Sarah Petrosini, who has assisted the project lead since 2012. Dick Robbins, who's retired, got the land exchange process started way back in 2010, and Janet Senior, who took over for Dick in 2013. And finally, thank you to Commissioner Fish, who was the commissioner in charge for at least 4 of these years and did a magnificent job of continuing to move it through the process. Aye.
Fish.
Thank you very much. Aye.
Wheeler.
Yeah, good job. Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Next item, 735.
Before we read this, I just want to point out that the next 4 are BES matters. We're going to try to trim our sails a little bit. We think we can be done by 5:30, so I just want to give you a heads up.
Very good, 735.
Not funny.
I'm out at 5.
We'll be done in 10.
You better hustle.
Authorize intergovernmental agreements and grant agreements in support of Your Neighborhood to the River program for 4 years beginning fiscal year 2019-20 in amounts up to $100,000 per year with a total aggregate cost not to exceed $400,000.
Commissioner Fish.
Jennifer Karps, would you come forward? And I'll just read the introduction and then we'll take questions. Council colleagues, the Neighborhood to the River program combines green solutions with engineered pipe solutions. It brings rain gardens and green streets into neighborhoods. It supports education programs and community projects that will add to the city's green infrastructure. And it has a broad reach across our city in neighborhoods like North, Northeast, Southeast, and Northwest. This item has an emergency clause on it because BES is fortunate to have 4 prospective grantees in the pipeline who are eager to get started. They are Janus Youth Program's Garden Works project, Verde's Cully Rain Garden Program, the Columbia Slough Watershed Council's Northeast Ainsworth Habitat Corridor Project, the Regional Arts and Culture Council's Whitaker Ponds and Cully Park Indigenous Artist in Residence Project. Jennifer Karps, who does a wonderful job as the BES Program Coordinator and lead on this project, is here to answer any questions you may have.
I just had one. I mean, first of all, this sounds fantastic. I was looking at the community impacts and community involvement statement here in the proposal, and there are a number of great benefits that Commissioner Fish has mentioned. And one of those benefits is access to environmental education, particularly for Portlanders who have historically maybe not had the opportunities that many have had to go to outdoor school or other types of programs. Can you give us some sense of balance? How much of the program is focused on education versus how much is focused on some of these other community partnerships?
Absolutely, great question. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. I would say to an extent it depends on the projects that come in because they all come from the community, but we're really eager that there be education involved in all of the projects. The projects
And you've outreach to all these organizations that the commissioner mentioned, and so they'll consider proposals and then bring them back, I would assume?
Yes, absolutely. These 4 prospective grantees actually came in through our CWISP, or Community Watershed Stewardship Program intake process. That's a mouthful.
That's funny. That's good.
And so this grant program will be similar to that. However, we will offer rolling grants, which will give us more flexibility to work with partners as they arise and as they come in, and as our outreach team find them and find their good projects.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Is there public testimony on this item, Carla?
No one signed up.
Great, call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Thank you for your presentation. Aye.
Fish?
Jennifer, thank you for your good work. This is a fantastic program. It's a relatively small amount of money with a big impact. Aye.
Wheeler?
I think this is great. I hope we'll also hear information back in terms of what kind of proposals you receive, what kind of proposals receive funding, and what the community impact is.
Absolutely.
But it's a great program. Thanks for doing it. Thanks, Commissioner Fish. I vote aye. Ordinance is adopted. Next item, 736.
Authorize intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality for regulatory oversight related to contamination management of various capital improvement and operating projects in an amount not to exceed $1.5 million over 10 years.
Commissioner Fish.
Are Taryn Meyer and John O'Donovan here? So if you could come forward, this is BES Environmental Specialist and BES Senior Engineer. I think I can tee this up and we can go right to questions, and we have the experts here if my colleagues have questions. This ordinance would continue an agreement that BES has had with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality for the last 20 years. And it would extend that agreement for another 10 years. The agreement continues environmental oversight services for city work performed on contaminated site. It streamlines the process to help minimize costs and to maximize efficiencies so site issues can be resolved more quickly. Currently, there are 18 active projects or sites that DEQ is overseeing? Partnering with us on. These include properties slated for affordable housing, brownfield redevelopment projects, and long-term environmental monitoring for city and facilities. We have 2 professionals here to answer any of your questions, but I think that captures what we're doing. And as I mentioned, this is a renewal of an existing agreement in a heavily regulated area.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. That's helpful. Any further questions? Any public testimony, Carla?
No one signed up.
Call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
I'm very glad we have technical experts who take care of things like this. Thank you for your work. Aye.
Fish?
Yes, thank you both for being here. Aye.
Wheeler?
I always feel badly that these go quickly because they are technical, and I know that you spend a lot of time and you're really thorough in going through this, and I want to acknowledge that. The amount of time we spend on it here is not a reflection of our estimation of the work you've put into this. We know you've put a ton of work into it, and we're very appreciative. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 737.
Amend contract with Moore Excavation, Inc. for additional compensation to complete existing contract work due to increased bid item quantities and changed conditions for the Slabtown Sewer Replacement Project, number E10663, not to exceed $4,157,000.
So I want to invite Liz Moorhead to come forward. She's the Environmental Services Construction Division Manager. And once again, I'll tee this up. This has actually a very good story behind it. I think I can say that. So Liz is going to take a couple minutes to amplify what I'll share with you at the outset. BES is continuing construction on the Slabtown Sewer Replacement Project. The project area is between Northwest Thurman and Overton from roughly 12th to 21st Street. The project is repairing a number of deteriorating and undersized sewer mains, some of which are more than 115 years old. During construction, changed conditions and changes in payment restoration requirements resulted in significant increases in the amount of construction required. This ordinance amends the current contract by $4.2 million, which is a significant amount, to a total not to exceed $12.6 million in order to complete the project and protect public health, properties in the area, and the environment. And as Liz will explain, sometimes a change in the scope is not clear to us until we actually get into the project. And because of some of the unique characteristics of this area, we have to come and ask for a modification of the contract. Liz, take it away.
Good afternoon. My name is Liz Moorhead, the Construction Division Manager for the Bureau of Environmental Services, and I've asked Nick Naval, the Construction Manager on this project, to join me here today in case you have any detailed questions about the project. A little history about the Slabtown area. In the 1870s, a lumber mill was opened on Northrop Street. The mill's discarded edges were a cheap source of heating and cooking fuel. The slabs were delivered and placed by the curb, as you can see in the picture on the left. This is how the area got the name Slabtown. As Nick mentioned, this project is replacing over 1.5 miles of deteriorating sewer pipes, some over 115 years old. The project limits, as you can see in the picture on the right, are Northwest 12th to 21st, Overton to Thurman. We're here today to ask council to increase the construction contract $4,157,000. The new construction contract will be $12,580,219. The increase is primarily due to changed conditions, including a utility conflict, soil conditions in pavement, and additional curb ramps. The original pipe location on Northwest 12th between Overton and Quimby is shown in dark black and green in this picture. It's the bold black, it looks like. When we went to construct it, we just discovered a utility duct bank was already constructed in this location. We did not know about this duct bank during the design of the project. BES had to move the pipe to a new location that's shown in red to the west of the design location. Challenges with the new location include structural tiebacks installed in the right-of-way by an adjacent building that was recently constructed. The new pipe must be placed so it does not interfere with these tiebacks. In addition, resident access must be considered at the Envy, Block 17, and Vista apartment buildings, as they all have their parking garage entrances on this street. And the Parker Apartments has its main entrance on the street. This slide shows an example of the challenging soils and paving conditions we are facing, and this is resulting in an increased cost to backfill and paving on the project. In addition, we're building 40 curb ramps that were added to the project.
Liz, what did you tell me was partly the cause of this? What was this a garbage dump or a landfill, or what was actually there?
That's correct. It's a lot of fill. So the fill material tends to cave in. It doesn't hold up in vertical walls like we like it to in our line of business. So you can see it caves in, and that results in the pavement caving in as well.
If I may add, Nick Naval, I'm the construction manager. We found like wood debris, wood sections of something that's black in color, that some of them have to be sent to Hillsborough for disposal because they're deemed as contaminated.
And what were the slabs that you referred to earlier? What were they for?
For heating and cooking back in the late 1800s.
And what were those
Ends
made
of
out
planks.
of?
So when the mill logged, made the pieces of wood, it was the outside, the
see.
circular pieces that were unusable from the trunk, from the logs.
Slabtown has always conjured up cuts of meat in my
Right,
mind,
yeah.
and that's actually a much more pleasant
I actually,
image
Commissioner,
for me.
Commissioner, I know that you're a fond of karaoke bars, among other things.
Yes, and I have sung karaoke at
I think you could
Slabtown.
make some money in a bar challenging someone to just, for $1, tell them where did Slabtown get its name? Because I did not know until I got this presentation.
I will bear that in mind the next time I need an extra buck, Commissioner.
There you go.
So this last slide, this table shows the existing contract is $8,423,219. We're asking for an additional $4,157,000 for a new contract total amount of $12,520,219, approximately 50% construction increase.
So Liz, let me just ask you the obvious question. We're used to seeing changes in scope and sometimes cost overruns and other kinds of things or inflation that lead to higher prices. This is very substantial. You've described the sources, and most of them were not foreseeable until you got into the ground. Why not just rebid this thing?
Well, we have an experienced contractor out on site right now doing the work. We're about 70% completed with the project, and we have an end date of Christmas. So we'd like to get it done. Rebidding the project means repackaging the project. It means rebidding the project. That adds 3 months to the job. And you never want two contractors in the same place stepping all over each other. So it's in the city's best interest to maintain the contractor we have and get the work done. They've done a lot of work in this area, and they're used to challenging projects. So we're fortunate to have them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fritz.
We had a more excavation contract this morning that had a pitiful amount of minority and women subcontractors. With this new amount of $4 million, how much of that is going to subcontractors and how much?
I don't know the exact numbers of what exactly is going to subcontractors. I can tell you that on this project, they're using DMWESBs for flaggers and traffic control, trucking, saw cutting, pothole excavation, rodent control, and video pipes. So they are using it for a number of pieces of work that's being done. I don't have the exact numbers.
Yeah, could you maybe find out?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
I don't need it anytime soon, but I would like them to know that we care about, that they're that they're going to strive to meet the 20% of the new amount as well as which they would have been required to on the old.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Very good. Any further discussion on this? Good presentation. Carla, was there any public testimony on this item?
No one else signed up.
All right, very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Good presentation. Next up, 738.
Authorize a 5-year joint funding agreement between the Bureau of Environmental Services and the U.S. Geological Survey, U.S. Department of the Interior, for hydraulic, temperature, and sediment monitoring in Johnson Creek, Columbia Slough, Willamette River, Fano Creek, and Tryon Creek for $672,108.
So we're going to hear from Caitlin Lovell in a second. Colleagues, Caitlin will also be back with us probably this winter to lay out the next chapter in our Salmon Sanctuary series, and she's been the lead on that, and we're very proud of that work. This agreement before us continues a water monitoring partnership with the U.S. Geological Survey that began in 1998. The information collected by USGS is used by the Bureau of Environmental Services for stormwater management, flood management and response, modeling and planning around fish, wildlife, and climate change impacts to our rivers and watersheds. This agreement leverages BES funds through matching federal funds. Here today is Caitlin Lovell, BES's Science Integration Division Manager, to give us a brief presentation. Welcome.
Thank you,
By
Commissioner.
the way, you doing Hood to Coast again this year?
Yes, in 3 weeks. Don't make me any more nervous than I already am.
Congratulations. My daughter's in training, hers
Oh, great.
too, so.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
Commissioners. As Commissioner Fish said, this agreement continues a longstanding partnership that we have with the federal agency, the U.S. Geological Survey. I don't have a PowerPoint for you today. I just have a couple of points about this agreement that I'd like to highlight. The first is that there are 2 parts to this partnership. The first is the city's contribution to the 8 stream gauges on every major Portland river. This represents the bulk of the expense of this agreement. Data from these stream gauges informs everything from how we design our sanitary pipes that run alongside and cross these rivers, our stormwater systems that drain to these rivers, and of course our restoration projects in these rivers. The gauges are critical to knowing when and where to deploy our flood response system. And moreover, the data are one of the long-term data sets that we have to look at how climate change is actually affecting Portland and to help inform the forecasting of future changes. The second part of the agreement is a unique collaboration across multiple jurisdictions that manage Johnson Creek. Together, we work with USGS to identify and study key challenges in the watershed that affect all of these agencies. In this agreement, the USGS will look at sediment, which will help us better understand where and what triggers the erosion, turbidity, and pollutants like DDT and heavy metals that associate with those sediments. We are also excited to embark on a pilot study using a new state-of-the-art temperature fiber optic cable that will help us locate all of the underwater sources of cold water that are critical to keeping Johnson Creek cold and clean in the face of increasing temperatures. We are hoping to deploy the first pilot in Crystal Springs Lake in mid-August or early September where the temperatures are still high. The total amount of this agreement is $989,425. This agreement is in the city's best interest because of the USGS's ability to pay 35% of that cost, leaving the city's 5-year total cost at $672,108. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Very good. Colleagues, any further questions?
So Mayor,
Commissioner Fish?
the only thing I want to add is, Caitlin, I understand that there is some urgency to move on this, and if there is, I'm prepared to make a motion to slap an emergency clause. Is there a sense of urgency?
There is actually, because the fiber optic cables work best when the temperatures are highest, we'd like to deploy them towards the end of August, which is sooner than the normal 30 days that we would allow before we could sign this contract.
Mayor, would you entertain a motion to slap an emergency
Sure,
clause
go
on this?
for it.
So moved.
For the purpose of making sure the construction timeline is met.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the amendment? Please call the roll.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The amendment passes. Any further questions on the main motion? Carla, did anybody sign up for public testimony?
No one signed up.
Very good. Call the roll on the motion on the ordinance is amended.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Again, we know that an enormous amount of work goes into the backstory on this, and then having implemented it, it's going to be lots of work as well. So thank you very much for bringing it in such a tidy package for us. Aye.
Thank you.
Fish.
No, Caitlin, we have to find a way to shorten your title so it can fit on a business card. Science Integration Division Manager.
Thanks.
We gotta find a way to get that down to 3. But thank you for your superb work, and I'm pleased to support it today. Aye.
Wheeler.
Yeah, well done. Thank you both.
Thank
I
you.
vote aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. Last item, 739, a second reading.
739, amend city code to update oath of office requirements.
Very good. And colleagues, just a reminder, this is the second reading. We've heard a presentation and testimony. The auditor amended this to accommodate some of the requests of Commissioner Hardesty. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. We are adjourned.